You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined not by your co-host tonight, Tim Hamilton. He is on vacation, but we are diehard Packers fans that love talking about the Pack. We're not diving into national sports media, talking points, and all that nonsense. We're getting into real football, and we're sticking with the Packers. We're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season, hopefully coming up soon, and sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason. If y'all want to support the show, please spike that like button for us. Follow us on all the socials and subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. Those things help us out tremendously. We appreciate them a lot. And before we get started, a few words from our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at TicketKing.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to PackersTalk.com/tickets or browse their website at TheTicketKing.com. This is the part where I would say good evening, Tim, but good evening to our listeners. I know we've already got a few of you tuned in to the live stream. If you are watching here, you see my face by myself, and we're going to do this tonight. We're going to have some fun together. Tim is having a nice vacation, much deserved, and so I wish him all the best. I hope he's having a great time with the family there. But there is still Packers talk to be had, so we are here this evening. I am here. I got a few of you. Matthew Tan already jumping in the comments. Good evening, sir. I, too, am excited for training camp. But we got a few things we can get into. It may not be a very long episode tonight, but there's always some stuff we can talk about. And so one of the first things that came across for me this week was the idea about the offense being able to sort of hold up their end of the deal while the defense starts to figure out, this new system with Hafley and everything. So, what do I mean by that? And what does anybody mean by that? I think one thing you've got to, if we can go back to McCarthy for this, right? Complementary football. Complementary football requires balance. And if the offense is too good, you're going down, scoring a touchdown in 30 seconds, that's actually not good on the defense. That actually hurts the defense. It doesn't give them time to collect themselves, catch their breath, look at a few shots from the previous drive, figure out where the weaknesses exist and all of that. You got to give the defense time to do those things and make those adjustments. And so, I think this question was pretty valid because this is still a young offense that's going to be very, very hungry to score. They're going to be hungry to there's so many different athletes' mouths to feed on this offense. Every single guy is going to want to make the most of his opportunity when he touches the ball. So, not that you don't have that in other situations, but you have that especially now with young guys that are trying to prove themselves and get going in this offense. So what you could have early in the season is a lot of offense very quick and often, right? That can hurt the defense as they're trying to learn, and the best way for this defense to learn is going to be to get reps, certainly, but you want quality reps, right? You want to, if you go out on a drive, whether you are successful in making stops, you get a 3 and out. Well, that's only 3 reps, right? So it's not a lot of reps, but it's still a success. Or if you go out, you get scored on, you need to understand why. You need to start figuring out what's going on, who made what mistake, how do you correct it? And if you don't have time to do that, you don't have time for guys to catch their breath, especially early in the season when it's hot wherever you're playing, probably humid. Guys will be cramping up. That could actually end up being an issue. So that's one thing that I think is interesting to watch for early in the season is how the offense tries to maybe spread things out a little bit, right? Chew up clock, really budget your time a little bit as you try to go down the field and score and not do everything all at once. You also don't want to show more than you have to as an offense. So there's a balance there, right? There's a delicate balance for sure. So I thought that was an interesting thing. I do, and Tim and I have talked about this. We think that this is going to be probably in the first 4 to 8 games, you're going to see the defense make mistakes. You're going to even still see the offense make mistakes, right? Still a lot of young guys out there doing stuff. So certainly you'll want as much complimentary football as you can get to give both sides the best shots they got. But yeah, so anyway, I thought that was an interesting take on things. You know, it's quiet time of the off season. Matthew Tan's got a suggestion here. You should get a former Packer player on to come on the show and get his assessment. I agree, Matthew. We're shooting out some messages. We'll see, man. You know, these guys, they got a lot of things they're doing, and we're a pretty small show, so we're not high on that list. But that's okay. We'll keep trying, and eventually somebody might come on with us. But, you know, the other thing that I was looking at, and this actually came to me today on Twitter, or X, I'm sorry. You know, we got to get used to that. Is, you know, who is the media still sleeping on? Because I even think that some people don't realize who they're sleeping on. You know, there was an interesting thing today, and I think, you know, shout out to Big B on Twitter. I believe he was the one who shared it. But, you know, it was someone pointing out the 2021 draft class and only mentioning the top 3 guys in that class contributing, or I think making a start. I didn't go all the way through and get the full context. But essentially, you know, he's saying, yeah, you know, that Eric Stokes, Josh Myers, and Amari Rodgers are the only ones who've even gotten starts from that 2021 class, which is funny because, you know, Royce Newman is the next one on that list, and he's certainly gotten a few starts, whether we like it or not. And TJ Slayton was the one that kind of set me off. It's like, my goodness. He's like, hey, this guy's a pretty good D lineman. You know, like, let's not overlook that. And I get it. You know, the others on the list, not great. And Isaiah McDuffie is down there. Kylan Hill, I think, showed some promise. We all saw that, and that just, you know, injuries, it looked like wrecked his career. But if there are people still in Packers media or just media in general sleeping on guys like TJ Slayton just because he's in the 2021 draft class, you know, who is still being slept on out there? You know, which of these Packers players is being slept on? And my first one is TJ Slayton. I think that this guy, you know, and I think certainly there's plenty of Packers fans that are giving him his due. I don't know that the national media has paid much attention to him, but he's a huge dude, and he seems to be an upstanding character, right? He's been here for several years now, played well in that D-line, hasn't shown any kind of issues character-wise, you know, just a hard-working big guy in there that's really hard to move. I mean, he's massive. He's like 330 pounds, I think. And, you know, one thing, I went over to PFF because that's a good way to, you know, compare things objectively. I wanted to pull up how's he looking and how's he comparing to other guys, others of his peers. And there were a few names on PFF as far as last year, 2023 season, as far as their grade for the season goes. You know, so here's a few guys that had a lower PFF grade last season than TJ Slayton. Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, that's a name that people have talked about, you know, trading for a pretty big price. Devontae Wyatt, obviously there's a teammate there, first-round pick. Taven Bryan, I wasn't even sure that I remembered that name, but he was also a first-round pick. And Solomon Thomas, now that's an older one, but another first-round pick. He was 3rd overall, had a lot of promise at one point. TJ Slayton is playing some good football. You know, I'm not over here saying he's a top 5 D lineman or something like that, but he's certainly not somebody to be slept on, although it is easy to do with, you know, the guys that are on that D-line as far as Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks really made a big splash last season. So it's easy to overlook him, but yeah, I think that's a mistake. I think this guy's going to keep getting better. He's still It's not like he's an old guy. You know, he's drafted in 2021. He's only been in the in the league 3 seasons. So he's one that, you know, to me, his needle is pointed straight up, and I don't know that there's a lot of people really acknowledging that. But you know, I'm curious, you know, if anybody wants to hop in the comments. I know there's a few of you out there, what you guys think about who is being slept on at this point in the season for the Packers. Certainly, some of the guys on the offensive side of the ball are getting their love. Love is not being slept on, I don't think, by anybody. So we'll just set that out of the way. Hard to sleep on a guy like a Josh Jacobs. I do think maybe A.J. Dillon is being a little bit overlooked in how he can fit in this offense going forward. His size, and if he can play to like his size, like we've all been, you know, hoping for, and he's back there again and got another chance to do it. He can certainly, I think, be a big difference maker in this offense, especially in critical situations like you hope for, right? You know, you want to see the guy in big downs, short yardage situations, goal line type situations like that. You want to see him show up and essentially be the hardest man on the field to take down. I still think he's got potential to be that. He certainly seems like he's in great spirits. Morale is high. He doesn't seem to be discouraged by the presence of a Josh Jacobs or you know, the draft picks that have been brought in. Packers clan jumping in the comments here saying Emmanuel Wilson. That's a fair one right there. Emmanuel Wilson is one that I think is going to make it very hard for them to cut. You know, and obviously we're just sitting here talking about the guys that are there. Marshawn Lloyd's the other one. Very difficult to keep 4 running backs, but I think some folks have already pointed out A.J. Dillon might slot into that role that is left by DeGuara, sort of that H-back type role, fullback in some situations. Maybe he's out in you know, a tight end or F situation. But, yeah, I think, you know, Emmanuel Wilson is going to be one that makes it very, very difficult to cut him. I think he's got to be sort of a default running back 4 right now on that depth chart. But if you can sort of slot A.J. Dillon as tight end 3/4 for that DeGuara role, and you know, Emmanuel Wilson can snag up some special team snaps, there's probably a case for him to be kept there. And I do believe he'll make it tough. He was a stud, man, when he was running all over in the preseason. So there's some names out there. You know, the receiving core is definitely getting a lot of attention. You know, it's funny because I think a lot of y'all are sleeping on Christian Watson still. And I'm the one, I've got receipts stacked up over here about what y'all think Christian Watson can't do. But, yeah, I think there's still a case for him to be slept on. A lot of folks think, you know, he's made of glass. I get it. I've heard that. I'm a believer that he has solved the hamstring issue. I certainly, from what we know about the previous training staff or the strength and conditioning staff, you know, there were some fundamentals it seemed like they were missing. You know, they warming up for probably like 10 minutes and then sending these guys out to do elite athletic maneuvers. That's not the best move, not the greatest way to get a hammy warmed up. So there's that. But, you know, he also went down to Madison. We heard about the imbalance, you know, so there's this overcompensation issue. So knowing about that, you should be able to fix it. I've got, you know, a friend in the physical therapy world, pretty intelligent person, saying that the Packers probably should have that technology on site, you know, as far as being able to test the balance of the hamstrings and what they're, you know, exerting and you know, whether they're overcompensating or not. If they didn't before, I would bet they have that now, whatever that machine or device or technology is. But yeah, I would bet Christian Watson's ready to come back. I would bet that he is as hungry as anybody to be, you know, what he can potentially be, right? You know, this 6'5" monster that's flying down the field faster than anybody. he's striking fear in the defense, and we've seen it, right? It's not like we haven't seen it. That's why we're all sort of frustrated, I think, a little bit that we haven't gotten to see him for a full season healthy. But what you have seen is, it's like, man, there's not a comparison. There was some folks on Twitter trying to draw some comparisons. What's his ceiling potential? Who's the guy? Is it a Megatron? Megatron's a little bit bigger, but still the explosion is similar. I don't think DK is the right guy. I think he's a little bit more of a musclehead than you might compare to Christian Watson. But really, when you start trying to think of Christian Watson comps, it's really hard to think of what that looks like. That full potential of 6'5", 215, running, as fast on the field as anybody, jumping as high as anybody. The guy is a freak. So yeah, I think some of you are still sleeping on him. Matthew jumping in here says Malik Heath. I don't think any of the diehard Packers fans are sleeping on Malik Heath, but certainly I don't think the national media sees him as part of this picture right now. Not even that's his fault. I think Bo Melton has kind of stepped in there, and this receiving roster is so deep. When a guy like that made a scene like he did in the playoffs last year, it's like, dang, even receiver 6 kind of looks locked up, like it's pretty wild. So Malik Heath, I certainly am a fan. He plays bully ball. And when you got a guy playing bully ball, that was one of the reasons I liked Allen Lazard. I was a big fan of the fact that he was one of the best blocking receivers in the league. That allows you to do some things. It allows you to spring some runs that you're otherwise not going to get. Even if the offensive line does everything that they're supposed to do 100%, that second level still needs, you still need some help to spring those long runs. And you've got guys back there that can spring some long runs. So having a guy like Malik Heath out there being, kind of another tight end almost, and how he can block and be a bully on that field in the second level, that's valuable, man. So he's one that is kind of like Emmanuel Wilson. He's going to make it hard to cut him. He's probably, the bottom line there. He's the one probably the most on the bubble, and that's certainly why you go into training camp. You have preseason games for that reason, to make these evaluations. Does Bo Melton continue to show up? I think everybody assumes he will. I think he will. Another young, talented guy right there. So it really is an interesting situation to look at and kind of observe. But there's definitely a case that some of y'all are sleeping on Christian Watson. There's a case to be made that some people are sleeping on Romeo Doubs. There's a lot of Jayden Reed love going around right now, for sure, rightfully so. Broke that rookie record last year. Pretty special territory. So yeah, there's, obviously I don't think any Packers fans at this point are sleeping on Dontavian Wicks. I think maybe even the national media is picking up on him, that he might be something special. So, I won't make that case. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look at here. And, here, Bite Me comes in with the comparison here, Christian Watson compared to Randy Moss. I don't think that's a bad one. I do think he's got a little bit bigger frame than Randy Moss and probably has a little bit more diverse route tree than Randy. I mean, Randy was throw it up there, boss, I'm going to go get it. And he was one of the best all time, right? I mean, nobody is going to replace Jerry in my heart. Jerry Rice is the GOAT. We're not having that argument. We can have that argument at a later date. But Randy is definitely up there, arguably number 2, number 3. And I think, it's a fair comparison to be made, because the speed that Randy had was different and special. And I think the speed that Christian Watson has relative to today's game is different and special. So that's one that you want to see, that he's got the upward explosion for sure. Randy might have a little bit on him. I don't know what the verts look like, but coming down with those jump balls is what Randy Moss, that's where he became elite and Hall of Fame. And, in the GOAT argument, man, nobody came down with those balls better than he did. That's why it's called getting mossed. So So, comparing Christian Watson's upward potential, that ceiling, to Randy Moss, I think there's something to be said there. I don't know if it's, pound for pound, a good comparison, but there's room to make that argument. Matthew says Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett's not as big. They're both speedy. Fair enough there. Both good explosive receivers. But Christian Watson's bigger than Tyler Lockett, I think by a fair amount, a couple of inches maybe. And that's just, with that size and speed combination that he's got, it does create some special stuff there. Bite Me coming in here says, I agree many sleep on Dobbs because he does nothing great but is good at everything, has a great connection with Love. Also, if the play breaks down, Love looks for Dobbs. There's something to be said for that. That was one of the things that A-Rod really demanded, is that guys be able to improv and know kind of what he wants when the play breaks down and he's rolling out one way or the other. I think that's special. When you've got a receiver like that your quarterback knows that, hey, that guy's going to be where I expect him to be and he's going to, do what I expect him to do. That's a big deal. So, definitely agree with you there. I love that Dobbs is sort of just this. He's just this do it all, show up. He's not the fastest, but he's not slow, right? He's a hell of a receiver, man. I don't think there's just one thing that you pinpoint on him, like, oh, he just runs routes better. He's just a great all-around receiver. Does have speed, does have ups, got great hands, and has a great head on his shoulder from what we can tell. And I do think some people are sleeping on his ability longer term. I think the decision, assuming guys stay healthy, the decisions that Goot is going to have to make about this receiving squad in the next couple of years, they're not going to be easy. There's not going to be easy decisions. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look at there, and we just spent how long on the receivers? There's a lot to be excited about there. But then you go down the list, and I don't know that there's any offensive linemen that you would say are being slept on right now. Everybody knows who Elgton Jenkins is. I think everybody knows who Zach Tom is at this point. And then from there's some question marks, but there's a lot of potential. So we'll see him duke it out in camp. But I think that there's plenty of talent there, and the best five are going to be pretty darn good, and that's what they keep harping on, is this best five. Seems like it could be a good approach. The way injuries happen, guys get hurt, guys need to be able to shuffle around, and if you can play multiple positions and be part of the best five, that's valuable. So I don't know that you can say anybody's being slept on there. And then, going back to the defense, I believe, Matthew, you called out Quay Walker needs to be fired up and he can be dangerous. I don't know if anybody's sleeping on Quay. There might be like more of the national level sort of overlooking him at this point. I don't know. I think a lot of Packers Nation is optimistic about Quay Walker. I definitely am. I'm excited about the athleticism in this linebacking core. That may be what's being slept on. And, we started this off talking about somebody, some other, I don't even know who it was, if it was a podcast or who that was, some other outlet talking about the 2021 Packers class, and Isaiah McDuffie's part of that class. He's one of your linebackers in that core. He's a pretty sound linebacker, and we can jump over and take a look at the PFF grade there and try to have a similar comparison that I did with TJ Slayton. But I wouldn't say he's a bad linebacker. I wouldn't say you're worried about having him on the field after what you've seen now last season. Now, certainly you've got to see how he does in Hafley's defense, no doubt about it. But, he's not somebody that I would say you're worried about having on the field. And when it comes down to PFF grades, Walker, not the highest last year. He's the number 66 linebacker, I think it looks like. Yeah, number 66. Graded linebacker last year. And that was with a 58.5 overall grade. So that's not a good grade. You definitely want to see him improve over that. We're all sort of looking at it like, all right, that's yesterday's problem because that was Joe Barry, and Joe Barry is gone now. So let's see how Quay does here. He's certainly shown ability, and, he's athletic as hell. Excuse me. we've seen him chase down Justin Fields and keep Justin Fields out of the end zone. And I made the comment, that was a couple seasons ago, I made the comment then that I don't know that the Packers have ever had a linebacker athletic enough to make that play that he made there. So, Quay Walker's got a lot of ability. He seems to be rising as a leader in the defense there. Guys seem to respect him and enjoy playing with him. I know he had a little bit of a behavioral issue there a few seasons ago now, but he seems to have overcome that. And, if you can get his full potential, that's pretty exciting to think about because he's a hell of an athlete too. But, Isaiah McDuffie is who we were talking about. He's graded only a few spots behind Quay Walker last season as the 69th overall linebacker with a 57.1 grade. So very close grade, basically a point off of each other. And so Isaiah McDuffie, he can step in there. I think you would pretty easily agree that Quay Walker's ceiling is higher, but Isaiah McDuffie seems like a reliable guy in the defense to just get the job done, and he's obviously gotten some special teams value. We've seen that. So, yeah, I feel like the linebacking core is in pretty good hands. Obviously, adding Cooper from this draft class, so there's a lot of exciting chatter about him right now, and he's just as athletic, if not more, So, there's a lot to be excited about in that linebacking core. I don't know that you can say that people are sleeping on him. It's just sort of you don't know what to expect yet, right? There's three guys there that need to mesh well in a new system. And obviously I left out Hopper, right? So Hopper's another draft pick that we've talked about on this show that he looks kind of exciting. He looks pretty athletic. He looks pretty explosive. He looks like a guy that, if he picks up the NFL game, he could be fun to watch. So there's a lot of upside, it seems like, but a lot of question marks on what that looks like. And then, this isn't necessarily meant to be like a position-by-position analysis, but really the only thing we haven't looked at or talked about yet is the Packers secondary. And I don't think anybody's sleeping on the Packers secondary. So, you got plenty of depth there. You've obviously got the addition of Xavier McKinney, some fun draft picks as well. Jair Alexander seems to be in good spirits and leading the team well. So, there's a lot of upside there. If there's any individual I would say that's being slept on in that unit, it would be Anthony Johnson Jr. And I got to go back. I think ESPN on their depth chart, for whatever the heck that's worth at this point in the year, I think he's listed as the starting safety. Next to it's Javon Bullard. Okay, he's listed as the safety there behind Xavier McKinney. So we'll see. But he's a young guy too, and we haven't gotten to see much of him. They thought enough of him to let him wear the number 36, though, and that's a special number for a Packers safety to be wearing. So, not that that's the end all be all, but he might also have something to say about this safety room. So it's very exciting, I think, to see who we have there. I think the biggest question mark on the defense is just how does everybody come together in the system. That's going to be answered, I think, really quick. But you're going to need 4 to 8 games. You're going to need 4 to 8 games to be able to answer that question, and you want to have patience with that. We saw what happened last year with the offense. You could see flashes of the potential early in the first half of the season, but man, there were just those frustrating mistakes that they couldn't overcome. And then when things clicked, boy, did they click, right? It was exciting to watch, and I think we're all excited to see them continue that. I think you could see a similar thing from the defense this year. Pipe Me says another guy is Zane Anderson. There's a rumor that this Zane Anderson doesn't even exist. I think it's just sort of a fun Twitter bit at this point. But, yes, Zane Anderson is out there, and he did make some plays in mini camp, I think, or maybe it was OTAs. I can't keep up with what's what. Sounds like he was picking on one of the backup QBs one day. But Bite Me says he's got the fastest 40 time of all the safeties on the team, best special teams safety on the team, and had 3 interceptions in one day a couple weeks ago. That's right. Yeah, I mean, we can't. He's probably in that category of gonna make it hard to cut him. He is a guy. He's hung around. And it's not like they've had phenomenal safety play last year. But they did move on from some people, and he's still around, so he's going to make it hard to cut him. There's a lot of guys in front of him that are going to be tough to beat, I think, if you're a Zane Anderson. But I think it ultimately depends on what is your special teams value in comparison to these other guys that you're up against in the safety room, and who's going to win that battle. The thing about having a talented roster like they have is you're going to have to cut some talented guys that might end up going and really playing some significant snaps for other teams at this point. Matthew Tent says it was Michael Pratt. Thank you. So, yeah, the rookie has a rough day. And then speaking of that, you brought up Michael Pratt and Sean Clifford about anybody sleeping. I don't know if anybody's sleeping on those guys. You can't really sleep on backup quarterbacks, but I think that's an interesting room to watch. Clifford didn't look bad last season. He looked good enough for some of, the lower IQ Packers fans out there to start suggesting he should be starting over Jordan Love. People don't forget. If that's you, we'll just let you sort of sit this next one out. But, he didn't look bad, right? He looked inspiring for a rookie backup quarterback. But, Michael Pratt, I think a lot of folks thought he would be drafted higher than he was. From what I watched in the draft stuff that we were doing, he looked like a pretty good quarterback to me, and I'm not a QB guru, so take that for the penny that it's worth. But it could be an interesting battle for QB2. And then do you keep a QB3? I think the rule is now they can keep a QB3 without it impacting the 53. So we'll see. It seems like they're heavily invested in that position at this point now. Like, hey, we're not going to sleep on the backup quarterback. Not that we're worried about Jordan Love, but I think they want to get back to those ways. And that was talked about a little bit earlier in the offseason where, previous GM regimes were responsible for starting quarterbacks that they, brought through as backups to Brett Favre, backups to Aaron Rodgers. Everybody loved to see how much Matt Flynn made as he made his rounds throughout the NFL. Congrats to Matt Flynn for all that money he made. And then there was Aaron Brooks. There was Mark Brunell, Matt Hasselbeck. There was a lot of guys who ended up they started in the league as backups for the Packers, and then they end up being starters. And shoot, some of those guys won some significant games. Matt Hasselbeck went off to won a Super Bowl. So, there was a pipeline there, and I think the Packers want to get that QB pipeline back. These guys seem like good guys to start that up with, and we'll see how that goes. But it should be a pretty interesting matchup. It should be a good battle. Should make the preseason a little bit more fun to watch. When you got a good guy throwing the football in the preseason to a deep receiver core, right? You'll have some good receivers on the field in the preseason. It should be pretty fun to watch. So, I don't know. You guys jump in the comments if there's anybody else that you think is being slept on at this point by national media or even Packers media. It's hard to say the Packers world is sleeping on anybody, but I guess some of you are out there overlooking them. But, we'll forgive you because we got a fun season ahead. So one of the things that we were going to do here this evening is go through the next, game like 5 through 8 and do a way too early analysis. So I'm jumping in. I'm going to pull up PFF and we can look at some depth charts as they stand. I don't really trust ESPN's depth charts at this point. But the first one that we've got, this is week 5 now, is going to be at the Rams. This should be an interesting matchup. I think we're all familiar that Matt LaFleur is now 4-0 against his buddy McVay. So not a bad record to have against the NFL's boy wonder. McVay is like a golden child right now as NFL coaches go. But take a look at their roster here real quick. Their lineup. What do we got? All right. They've got some decent talent coming back in. Stafford, obviously, I'm not going to project him to lose anything. I feel like he's going to take a lot of the A-Rod path where he'll probably be pretty damn good until the day he stops playing football. Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't predict that offense to be anything less than dangerous, right? You got Puka Nacua, you got Kupp still, you got Stafford, there's plenty of weapons there. And their O-line isn't, the best, but it's not the worst. They've got a pretty decent O-line. The right side is real strong. They've got a pretty strong offense, and they're going to, when it comes to the chess match, Hafley against McVay is going to give Hafley all he can handle, So that'll be an interesting test, I think, for that defense early on to see how these guys are taking on the system. And how is Hafley in that play calling chess match role? I mean, that I think is, we've talked about it before on the show. I think that's one of the things that set apart Dom Capers is he was such a good chess player in his prime on the field. He always seemed to have the perfect call at the perfect time. His guys were prepared. They knew what to expect. Everybody loves that clip of Clay Matthews in the Super Bowl. Spill it, Pickett. Pickett pushes Mendenhall out there. Matthews forces the fumble. Just huge play, turning the game around. And that felt like the epitome of Dom Capers' defense, man, in its primes. Like, these guys were just sharp. They knew what to expect. That's the chess match. Hafley, we don't know. You don't have a whole lot of sample size of him in the NFL at all, certainly not as a play caller. You do have the 2019 year with the Ohio State defense that a lot of people like to give him a lot of credit for. So there's not a whole lot out there to really look at. So you're going to have to really see how he does. We talked about the first 4 games last week. Y'all can go check that out. It's on YouTube. Subscribe to that YouTube channel on Packers Talk. But yeah, this I really do think is going to be one of the first big tests for Hafley when it comes to the mental side of this thing and being a play caller and going up against, an elite play caller in McVay. That could really be the sort of the headline for this game. Otherwise the Rams defense, I don't know much about their defense. It looks like they did draft Kitchens. I was a big fan of that guy. We'll see how he adapts to the NFL. As far as their PFF grades go, they're not a bad defense. They've got some good players here. They've got some strong rookies that they've brought in. They could be a talented defense, but is this a defense that I think the Packers offense should be afraid of? Absolutely not. When I look at this defense and, the Packers' ability to go 5 wide or, send their tight ends straight up the field or, whatever you want to do with your running backs. I mean, the options are endless that LaFleur is going to have to scheme with. And I shouldn't leave Stenavich, Stenavich, LaFleur, Love, the Packers' offensive brain trust there. They're going to have a lot of different things they can do if all of these weapons stay healthy. So I think any defense is going to look at this and have their hands full and really be scratching their head about how, what do you take away and how do you stop them, slow them down, and all that. So, does this defense strike fear in me? No, not at all. Especially minus an Aaron Donald. I think that's the biggest thing, right? When Aaron Donald is in the middle of that defense, that's one thing. He's one of the greatest D linemen of all time. Total game changer. When he's not there, there's some guys there, good PFF grades. They're not bad players, but they're not Aaron Donald. So, we'll see what that defense looks like. I'm not saying it'll be a bad defense, but the Packers offense is going to give pretty much anybody fits right now, as long as they stay healthy. So, I think that this Rams game, I think that this should be a win. I think this should be LaFleur's, he should go to 5-0. Do you end up in a shootout? Is there, a situation you have that happen here? I think there's potential for a shootout for sure. But yeah, I would give the Packers, probably the likely win on this one. And then Matthew Tan says he's got tickets for that game. That's right. You're headed to the Rams game. You'll have to give us some reports back on how the game was, what the atmosphere was like, if the Packers traveled well for that game. Hopefully we do. I think that we always do and probably will for that one as well. You also ask, can anybody stop Kupp? That's the question. Yes, Matthew, actually, Jair Alexander can stop Kupp, no doubt about that. So I'm not worried about that. I think the Packers DBs, the talent that you've got across the cornerback position and the safety position is going to be fun to watch. When those two can rely on each other and trust each other, that's when it starts to look a lot more like that 2010 Packers championship defense. And that was fun to watch. So, Bite Me says, what are your thoughts on DL Spencer Wage? Second-year player, 6'5", 300 pounds of muscle, has a 9.5 RAS score. Excited to see how he looks. Ballantyne slept on as he locked up Justin Jefferson. Yeah, it's fair to say that Ballantyne's being slept on. I think it's easy to sleep on him with all the other DBs that are in that room, but he's not going anywhere, right? I don't think he's going to make it easy to cut him either, and I don't think they need to cut him. I think that DB number or CB number 4, assuming everybody's healthy, is safely his spot. I will say Spencer Wage, definitely overlooked that one. 6'5", 300 pounds of muscle. That's fun. That's fun, man. It's another guy. Put him in the category of going to make it hard to cut him, but that D-line is deep. You've got guys there that at the top are going nowhere. Kenny Clark obviously is the leader there. I think Devontae Wyatt has earned a number 2 spot there, and then TJ Slayton, we already talked about him. He's probably him and Carl Brooks, DL number 3, depending on what you need. If you're stopping the run, he's probably in there ahead of Brooks. If you're rushing the passer, you're probably going with Brooks. That'll be a battle, but 1 through 4 there, I think, is locked up by those guys. I don't think it's going anywhere. And then, Colby Wooden, right? Don't sleep on him. Yeah, he's certainly made a case. I think he quieted down a little bit. He didn't make quite the splash that Carl Brooks did, but he was still out there and made some plays and made himself seen. So that D-line room is going to be a tough one to crack. But if you are 6'5", 300 pounds of muscle with a 9.5 RAS score, you're off to a good start. You're off to a very good start. So that one will be fun to watch. Spencer Wage, we'll see, where he finds his home, where along that D-line, outside, inside, all that. But I would say that a lot is up for grabs right now too, right? When you're in a new system, things change, and some guys are better at things in this system, whereas other guys were better in the other system. So I don't know how much room there is for that. I don't think all of a sudden you're going to see Kenny Clark go down to like 4th on the depth chart. I don't think anything like that would happen. But there may be some shuffling around from 2 to 4, and we'll just see how that all plays out in training camp. But the next matchup that we got here coming along in week 6 now is the Cardinals. We got the Cardinals at Lambeau. Excuse me. That'll be an interesting one. The Cardinals got some firepower. You got a healthy Kyler Murray, it looks like, and he certainly seems to at least act like he's got a chip on his shoulder. That was sort of weird how his contract situation went, and it got kind of weird there for a while, but he's the quarterback, right? So you got him, you got Harrison Jr. out there. That'll be an interesting duo, and, that could be a tough matchup, man. When you've got an athletic quarterback like Murray and a receiver like Harrison Jr., that's something for a defense to worry about. Oh yeah, and your running back's pretty good too, right? They've got James Conner there, and then looks like their the O line isn't terrible, but they could definitely use improvement. That could be a weakness that the Packers could exploit, but that'll be a tough offense to contend with. And if the Packers are still dealing with silly mistakes like communication errors and things like that, that could be a really tough offense to stop. Those are guys that you make one mistake and they make you pay for it really fast. When they're athletes like Murray and Harrison Jr. And the rest of these guys that they've got, Wilson. That could be a tough offense to contend with. And then as far as the Cardinals' defense looks, you got Baker back there in the secondary at safety, kind of being the quarterback of things. They've got Murphy Bunting, who cornerback from Tampa Bay. He's out there now. They drafted Melton. I know some Packers fans were hoping for Melton to get drafted by the Packers, but that looks like that's their other cornerback they've got starting out there. And then the center of their defense, it's all right. Again, they're not bad, but man, again, like the offense that the Packers have, I think that they're going to give this defense all they can handle. I think you're going to give any defense that can't go probably, 4 deep in their corners, they're going to have a hard time. If your safeties can't cover tight ends, if your linebackers can't cover tight ends, you're going to have a hard time. And the Packers are going to figure out which one of those things is which, and they're going to try to exploit it. So that'll be interesting to see how they approach each game and each matchup. The D-line isn't really the strength of this Cardinals team. It doesn't look like you could see the run game or the screen game maybe take a little bit more of a feature role against the Cardinals defense. But, at Lambeau, I look at this as a game the Packers should win, and I'm biased. I'm a homer. That's why y'all are listening to this, right? This is Packers talk. This is not unbiased NFL talk. But as a Packers fan that tries to look at things objectively and tries to say, like, are you worried about this? Are you not? This is a game I think they should win. I don't think that this is a game where the Cardinals offense should be able to outscore the Packers offense. We haven't hit training camp. There's no injuries. We haven't seen preseason. This is way too early analysis, so don't take it too seriously. But that's the way I see it on these guys. And then the next matchup that we've got is going to be, this one could be a marquee matchup here. Now we got the Texans coming to Lambeau. You obviously have Stroud. The Stroud-Love comparison's already firing up. Everybody wants to talk about that. And, who should be the MVP candidate? Who should be the Super Bowl favorite? All that. I think that this is a fun sort of potential rivalry almost. I don't know that you play the Texans enough for that to happen, but it could be one of those things where it's fun to see these two QBs go head-to-head. And you hope for probably an exciting first matchup. We've talked about a couple of offenses here that, the Rams and McVay, that's a tough offense, right? There's some tough weapons. McVay is a tough, play caller to go against, one of the toughest. Obviously, Stafford is one of the best in the game still. That's going to be a tough offense. The Cardinals offense, a lot of explosion there, could be a tough offense. This Texans offense, this is going to be tough. This is one that you got to look at and go, oof. Boy, I hope they got it together here. Like, I hope their mistakes are cleaned up. I hope your communication errors have been minimized now. Because when you're looking at this offense, this is scary, man. Like, you got Collins, you got Diggs, you got Dell, you got Stroud dishing to him. I mean, that might be one of the best 1 through 3 receiver groups in the league. We're not here to get into that argument. We can go searching for that all night. This offense is terrifying. So the Packers better have it together by week 7 here. Week 7 against the Texans. Now, you're at Lambeau, so that is clearly, or has been to this point, an advantage for the Matt LaFleur teams. So there's that. I don't know that, at this point in the season, weather is much of an advantage. Hopefully it's not just like a rainy slop fest, although that probably levels the field a little bit. This could be one of those that I don't even know. Like, if you can't stop this offense, you might actually have a problem here, because the Texans defense looks pretty damn good. This is one that there's some talent there. They're going to get after the quarterback. They've got talent in the secondary. Their linebackers might be the weakness of the team, but they're not bad, and the defensive leadership they've got is pretty solid. So, these guys are going to play strong football. They're going to play, good fundamental football. They're not going to make a lot of mistakes, and they're going to be prepared for a chess match. And that's where I think if there is a defense that could give this Packers offense trouble, it's one like this where, you have to sort of pick your poison. There's not a lot to exploit. But they've got to do that too. You can't really look at it like if you can't exploit something, this Packers offense all of a sudden can't do anything. I just think it's more in this game going to depend on where is the defense at, because the receiving talent, just the talent across this offense, this Texans offense is impressive, and it is scary. And that's where, if you can't stop them and you can't go possession for possession, score for score, you lose a shootout. You lose maybe a 2-score game at the end of the game. And this is one that the Packers, I think, realistically could lose. I'm not saying I expect them to lose this. I don't think they're any less capable than this Texans team. I think that this really could be a Super Bowl preview. I think if it was, it would be an exciting one. But this could be a tough game. So you have to, as Packers fans, prepare for this one to be a tough game. Maybe, if you're sort of mapping what to brace yourself for, maybe just mark this one as a loss. Let them, the defense is still struggling, making some mistakes, couldn't quite, pull off that last play there at the end. Whatever it may be, this is a game that really could be tough because you got a lot of talent on that Texans team, offense, defense, just across the board, strong coaching as well. So, very, very fun game to look forward to, I think. If you're going to that Texans game, I hope you're ready to stand. Stand the whole time, leave your voice there. Don't take your voice to work on Monday. Drink an extra one in the parking lot before you head in. I'm kidding. No, we drink responsibly. I'm talking about water is what I meant to say. But yeah, that I think will be a really exciting game to be at. And then wrapping up this segment here, the 8th game of the season, way too early analysis, is going to be at Jags in Jacksonville. Trip down to Florida. I think this Packers team, let's see here, I don't even know. I haven't looked at the dates on these games. But I imagine, it's going to be getting cold up there in Green Bay at this point. And that trip to Florida might be pretty fun. Might be distracting too. That may be what you have to worry about there. The Jags team is interesting. They're an interesting one that I don't know that too many people are afraid of them this season. I don't know. Obviously Trevor Lawrence in 22 looked like he was poised to be that dude. 23 didn't have that next sort of step in greatness that everybody's sort of watching for. I don't think that means that his career is doomed, right? I don't think that all of a sudden you can expect that he's not going to be a good quarterback. You got a Brian Thomas Jr. out there at receiver now. That guy is going to be a difference maker. That was one that we were pretty excited about when we were talking about draft prep. They've got a solid O-line there in Jacksonville, and then the other receivers out there, Davis Kirk, you got a good room. You got a strong room there. I don't think that it's a room quite to the level of the Texans. So, if you can handle the Texans, you can probably come in and have a plan for the Jags. Evan Ingram's out there. He's going to be tough to handle. But you've got the athleticism to handle a good tight end, a big tight end or a fast tight end. You got the athleticism at linebacker and safety now to handle that. So this is an offense that could be tough to stop. I don't think you can expect the defense to go out there and shut these guys out or put up the most dominant performance. But when looking at this Jags defense, it's not bad either, right? Again, this is kind of a situation that's sort of similar where kind of like the Texans, where they don't really have any weaknesses to exploit, but I would say that the Texans are probably just a little bit better, right? So if you're able to make it through that Texans game, you can probably make it through this game. Again, the difference, probably the biggest difference being that you're going down to Florida versus playing at Lambeau. But yeah, they've still got some good talent on that Jags defense, and let's not forget that Darnell Savage is now down there. So, there will be some familiarity going on with him and the team. I don't know that he'll be able strategically to give away too much, because offenses are aware of that, right? When you got a guy that you've practiced against on the other side, and a guy that could be familiar with your stuff, you're going to change things up. You're not going to give him stuff that he'll recognize. And I don't even know that there's much of a chip on the shoulder. I think Savage is probably still good friends with a lot of those guys. Could the Packers have been better to him? Could they made him an offer? Sure, but they decided they didn't want to bring him back. I don't know that they did anything wrong by him. And now he's got paid and he's down in Florida. And I'll tell you what, he'll probably be pretty happy about that come December and January. But this could be a tough defense to go against. Now, is this a defense again that you look at and go, man, I don't know how you're going to score against them? I don't think there's a single defense in this league that this Packers offense is not equipped to score against. So you're not going to have that. Again, assuming everybody stays healthy. Injuries limit a lot of things. We've seen that happen before. But, when you're looking at this game, I think the biggest thing to watch for is, how are guys looking? How's the defense communicating? If they're doing well, you probably should win this game. I think the Packers offense should be able to score on that Jags defense more than that Jags offense can score on the Packers defense, right? And that's assuming a lot of things, but this is way too early analysis, so that's what we do. We assume some shit. But here we are. I think that this is one that I would call maybe a probable win for the Packers. Depending on how they're traveling, do they get distracted? We've seen that happen when they go out to the West Coast. Does that happen here? Hopefully not. But again, I believe the Packers are equipped to win this game. I think you've got the talent on defense that as long as everybody is gelling well within the system, you should be able to handle this Jags offense and come away with a win here. So I just made us, call it 3-1 in that stretch. We'll chalk up a loss to the Texans, just so that I'm not too much of a homer bias. But if the offense holds up their end of the deal, even if the defense struggles early this season, you should be able to win games. I think the Packers probably sense that. The offense probably senses that they've got a little bit of swagger and continuity, and they're not learning new things. Well, they're not learning new fundamentals, right? The new things they're learning are building on all the things they already know, which those are easy things to learn, and certainly easy things to correct, and those aren't going to be things that cause you to make big game losing mistakes, right? So I think this should be a pretty fun season, Packers fans, and we got a lot to see yet, and this is probably the dullest part of the offseason, right? We're on the other side of all the other sports championships. Even baseball's boring now, so here we are. We've dreaded this part of the year all year. We only got a couple more weeks of it, and then training camp fires up, and we get to start talking about that, and then preseason fires up. Before you know it, we are marching week by week, analyzing these games, and hopefully watching the Packers put together a Super Bowl season, because I certainly would love to see them play the Super Bowl in New Orleans again. We want to see them play in any Super Bowl, but I'm in driving distance of New Orleans, and that might make it a little bit easier to actually get out there. I would love to do that. And I love New Orleans. If you haven't been to New Orleans, it's a pretty cool city, man. It's rough, Go out there expecting a rough time, but it is a lot of fun. A lot of fun indeed. But anyway, this is not a New Orleans podcast. This is a Packers Talk podcast, so we'll keep it to that. And I will go ahead and keep this one short this evening with Tim not being here. I'll let y'all know we are trying to do a couple things and have a few more guests on the show as we approach the season. But we're not a big podcast, right? We're still just a small little crew here, having some fun, just talking Packers every week with you guys, jumping in and having some fun with us. But we're going to do the best we can, right? I think there are a few folks out there interested in jumping on with us, and hopefully y'all will enjoy those folks that can. We might bring back a few that we've already had, who knows, but stay tuned to find out, right? We'll be back every Monday night at 9:30 Central p.m. That's after the kiddos go down, in case anybody's wondering, why is it so late? Well, we got kids, man, and it is really tough to do a podcast when you got kids. So that's why. And so now the kids are asleep, and they let us do this uninterrupted, and we certainly appreciate that. Now, we appreciate you, Packers fans. Thank y'all for hanging out with us this week on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. Check us out on YouTube, Twix, as we'll call it, Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram. Spike that like button for us. That is a big one. If you enjoyed this episode, and please subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. And we will see y'all next week, Packers fans. Go, Pack, go!